What did you take away from these new software introductions? What's the strategy behind this move from Apple?
Well, it looks to be improvements on what they do. I mean, Apple's fundamentally known for taking difficult things and making them simple. That's what they've always aimed to do, and they've often succeeded at that. But I think as iOS has gotten more and more involved, the capabilities of the phones and the iPad and the Macintosh have become so great that the complexity has shown up in the software and user experience. So it's this constant refining purpose of stripping out some of those some of the hair out of this thing and really making it a little more accessible. I think that's what we see from this, trying to give developers, give the operating system a different look, a simpler look, as well as to create some platforms for developing devices for the home and devices to manage health. None of this is groundbreaking, and it's all going to be about the execution, which we can't fairly evaluate at an event like this. We've seen Apple try things in the cloud, for example, for years and years and years with great failure. So I think you'll see a lot of press about this event today saying they've got this great new solution for the cloud. Well, there isn't a single person here who knows if it's great or not, because all their prior efforts have run into big problems. We, of course, all would like a simpler way to compute on the cloud. Maybe Apple's come up with it this time.
Hey, Cory, what about Apple's progress in making all of its devices play with each other nicely, seamlessly, without any problems, and maybe even having them play with Android phones?
Well, that's going to be really key. I mean, we've seen such spectacular growth where the iPhone is, in some places like the U.S., most popular phone and certainly the most popular computing device ever invented. The iPad as well. We've seen so much from these devices, but their interoperability hasn't always been great. The ability to take a picture on your phone and see it as one of your favorite pictures on your iPad. That's one of the things they were showing off today. They were showing off family plans where you can manage all the devices in a family as big as 6 as long as they've got the same credit card. So trying to manage some of that interoperability could actually tighten the ecosystem for Apple.
Now, I understand, Cory, that you've got a special guest for us?
Yeah, indeed. And you've been following Apple for quite a while here. Is this a very different developers conference?
No, I wouldn't say it's very different. I think it's at par for the course, frankly. There were a lot of people that came in today expecting hardware, but they don't typically do that at a developers conference. They really focused on the software, and they did some cool things. You mentioned the continuity, where you're going to be able to start writing an email on your iPhone and then realize, wait a minute, there's more I want to do. So you sit down at your Mac and continue composing that email. And in theory, it's seamless, like you said, until we see it and touch it.
You've been covering Apple for so long. I mean, give me a list, if you will, of all of the cloud computing efforts that they've had. People such as Steve Jobs have ripped apart.
Well, yeah. So, .Mac, and then Mobile Me, and now iCloud. None of them have been resounding successes. But this isn't the cloud, right? The continuity is not the cloud. So I give them a way better than even odds of getting that to work right. The stuff that they're doing with the cloud, the whole file system in the cloud, we'll see how that does for them. I think one of the other huge things that most people probably don't realize they miss on iOS is the extensibility that they just announced today.
They talked about a lot about that in there, and a lot of it was about sort of the tools that developers would use. Yes. And like a good Mac conference, people jumped up and cheered when they would hear about some plug-in that you could add to your phone to save a device to Pinterest or something.
That's just it. Right now, Apple has been so sandboxed out that...
Sandboxed out? What do you mean?
Sandboxed out, meaning that every app lives in its own space, and apps can't really talk to each other. So if you have their web browser, Safari, up until now, a developer couldn't write something that added functionality to Safari. You just lived with whatever Apple put in, and that was it. Extensibility means they allow plugins. So you can have things like a Translate plugin inside Safari. You can have all kinds of things inside Safari. Maybe you'll have plugins in Mail. They've got plugins in the OS now where you can just have a new keyboard that's just right there in all your apps. Previously, that was something Apple just did not allow. So I think that's huge. It's a catch-up game with Android, for sure. But I think it's huge.
Yeah, Dave Hamilton, as you look at the history of the Mac and Apple development, I feel like I'm interested in this stuff, and I don't want to denigrate what they're doing, but I feel like a lot of this is looking back fixing old problems, not pointing away to the future, more than Apple has been for a long time.
There's a lot
Is that fair?
Yeah, I think so. There's a lot of iterative stuff in iOS 8, things that iOS 7 was a totally new game for them, a new look, a lot of new stuff, and I think iOS 8 sees a renewed focus on the iPad that iOS 7 really kind of didn't, and I think that's a good thing. But yeah, I mean, you can fault them for going back and fixing stuff, but we can also credit them for taking a look and saying, hey, here we go.
Right.
This is the stuff our customers need.
And we always said that my favorite example ever was Steve Jobs demonstrating a new feature in the new Microsoft Word that would underline a misspelled word, and the Mac faithful crowd, your Mac Observer readers, right?
That's right.
Your Mac Observer readers and the like would jump up and cheer at something that was already available in Windows. They just didn't know it because they only used Macs.
That's right.
So Tim Cook talked about the fact that so many of the people in this conference had never been to a WWDC before. Did you get a sense, again, writing for Mac Observer, founding Mac Observer, Dave Hamilton, that in fact this is a very different kind of crowd?
No, it feels like the same crowd. I've been coming to WWDC for the last 10 years, and they can't fit all the people in that want to be there, right? So there is a natural churn. It's just a luck of the draw who actually gets in, but it's always the same type of people. I mean, it's the developers. It's the Apple faithful developers.
All
That's
right.
who it is.